Hello, I'm Peter Nesbitt, the director of the Mitchell Gallery here at St. John's College. As part of our 2-month inquiry into Berenice Abbott, I am pleased to introduce you to Anna Craycroft. Craycroft is an artist who has written and curated exhibitions about Abbott's work. She has also spent time in the Abbott archive. In the short illustrated talk that follows, she generously shares with us her evolving thinking on the U.S. Route 1 photographs, particularly as they relate to Abbott's other activities.
This is a photograph of Berenice Abbott in the middle of taking a photograph. She is, her head is covered by the hood of her view camera. The photograph was taken in the 1970s in Maine. The photographer is unknown, or I do not know who the photographer is. I found this at in one of her archives. I believe it was at the New York Public Library archive, and I took a picture of it with my iPhone. My name is Anna Craycroft. I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I am not a photographer by trade. I encountered Abbott's work, and my attraction to her work I came late in my life, I guess. I was an adult. I was an artist. I had not heard of her. And it was 2013, and I saw her work and was totally floored because it did something that I really wanted to do in my work and had never figured out how, or didn't think I was doing it well enough. In any case, what she did was she combined these two ways of engaging viewers that are seemingly contradictory. Her work is both didactic, it explains itself, it's plain spoken, it's direct, and in some ways even at times educational. And it's also poetic, it's open-ended, it leaves room for interpretation, it asks questions, and there's always a possibility of metaphor. And I couldn't figure out in looking at her work how not only did she allow these two these contradictory forces to coexist, but they actually complemented each other. So I immediately wanted to find out everything I could about her and her work and her methods. And even though, as I said, I'm not a photographer, I thought there must be some explanation to the mystery of how she did this or why she did this. What would have been her experience and perspective that would have led her to make this kind of alchemical magic with her work. So I did a deep dive into her archives, and I visited all of them, and went on to put together an exhibition that included most of Abbott's kind of an overview of the range of work that she made in her life. But I actually omitted the Route 1 series because at the time it didn't feel to me like that body of work had the complexity that some of her other works or enterprises had. And now reviewing them for this talk, I realize that I was wrong, and that it's sort of, I fell for, in some ways, the trick of her work. I fell for the kind of face value of it and its sort of matter-of-factness. And I remembered as I was falling for that, or uncovering the fact that I'd fallen for it, that if you only take her work at face value, you miss the power of its paradox. A key thing to keep in mind about the Route 1 photographs is that they were taken in one trip, that they're all sort of taken in sequence and intended for publication in a book with some captions. And so to view one image in isolation, it doesn't exactly, it's not the way the work was designed. It was not what the work was designed for. Hank O'Neill, who is a friend of Abbott's and has published multiple books on her work, talked about this series as that aspect of this series, and the way the work was always supposed to be, each image is supposed to be seen relative to another. It kind of explains why some or many of them are mundane or even kitsch, and that was, in a sense, sort of the subject matter. You know, you're on a highway, it's the same for a long period of time. It's, in a sense, creating a nothing. It's homogenizing culture. it's blurring the lines between regions, so that when we view these photographs individually, in a sense, we do a disservice to the way that they were created. However, it is an interesting construct to also look at the range of subject matter. So some of the images in this series are benign or seemingly benign, like this one. It's just an off-ramp, it's not, or a split in the highway. But not all of them are like that. There's also photographs with much more loaded subjects, like this one. Entitled Slave Market, Louisville, Georgia, what we understand from the title that we're looking at is an architectural record of slavery in this location. And there's nothing in the photograph that would articulate that. It's benign. It's ostensibly the blue skies where there's flowers or some kind of foliage planting around this building. It's in the middle of a parking lot and a strip mall, but it's also a monument to violence. We don't know that. And there's something about the kind of omission or the lack of drama in the photographs, which I think can read like a lack of articulated position or agenda or politics on behalf of the artist, right? So where is Abbott in the work? And the lack of presence is, I think, the key to understanding the power of her work or the way that it works. And maybe that is most clearly articulated in how she describes how she defines her practice as a photographer.
I think all photography is documentary, or it isn't even photography. Most photographs are documents by the very nature of the realistic image. When they try to make it a non-realistic image, they're imitating another medium.
That was a recording of Berenice Abbott speaking in the film Berenice Abbott, A View of the 20th Century by Kay Weaver and Martha Wheelock. Abbott summarily kind of describes her perspective on photography, or what she values in photography, both here and in another recording from the same film.
I think you have to be intensely personal and be true to yourself. And the subject matter that excites you is something you want to photograph. Something prompts you to take this picture. And you have to convey to the person who looks at it what it was that prompted you to take it.
On the one hand, Abbott's saying all photography is documentary. On the other hand, she's saying you have to be intensely personal. So these are, again, we're looking at an opposition or a binary, right? It's an objectivity, subjectivity, creativity, documentary. That is a term that Abbott used, a creative documentary. And here she is talking about it in 1937. This is I'm going to read an excerpt from her writing. Art in the best periods has been documentary as well as aesthetic, and a great part of its beauty grew out of its sound, realistic, and recording function. We speak of documents in a light sense and without understanding that the historian and recorder also exercises selection. Yet even the earliest daguerreotypists, handicapped by primitive equipment as they were, posed their sitters or arranged a composition of the landscape that they were photographing. The best contemporary photographers practice the same creative control of their machine. To be documentary creatively implies that the photographer has a point of view and an objective. Documentation means the imaginative and purposeful representation of the whole world seen by the camera eye, and by that token, the human eye. This final sentence, seen by the camera eye, and by that token, the human eye, is a linking of the body of the photographer to the camera. It's a sameness. It's not a likeness, but it's a sameness. And in this photograph that we're looking at right now is a picture of Abbott taken in 1977 by Hank O'Neill. And again, Abbott's identity obscured by the act of her taking a photograph. I think it's important to pay attention to Abbott's relationship to the body. And we see this most acutely in another aspect of her practice. Abbott was a photographer who took photographs, printed photographs. She was also a photographer who invented a variety of devices, mechanisms to improve the photographs she took, the process of taking them, of developing them, of printing them. And she held multiple patents for her inventions. Among her inventions were something like this, which is the shoulder pod, which was a tripod for putting the camera literally onto your body, right? So extending your body with a camera on your shoulder. The Kit Kat jacket or carry-all jacket, which was designed for photographers who were out in the field taking photographs for long extended periods of time and would need to carry things like a dozen number 5 flash bulbs, an exposure meter, a 4x5 film packs, a filter, cable release, booklet lens tissue, 1 handkerchief, 1 lens shade change, your wallet, your keys, a package of cigarettes, lipstick, and a compact. So interestingly, this is a jacket for photographers out in the field taking photographs all day, but a lipstick and a compact. So not just any photographer, only those who wear lipsticks and need a compact. And this, perhaps my favorite of her inventions, the candid camera or the thumb camera. And this was another example of the extension, how the camera was an extension of the body, how the camera was another eye of the body. And here's a description of Abbott talking about the camera in an interview that she gave. You don't have any viewfinder. You don't have any mechanism. You have a part of your body. It's the most useful aiming organ of your body. I knew this was true, but I didn't know why. So I spoke to a doctor about it in Boston. If you aim with your thumb, you are aiming your picture perfectly, and you click as you look. Now, if you practice just a little bit, I can aim over there at the lamp perfectly. Your aiming and sighting is all with this, she indicates her thumb. Your eyes are your subject. This is the most important thing. No, you are not looking through a camera. You are looking at your subject. This is what you should be looking at. Abbott says, your eyes are your subject. And in this device that she invents, you don't hold the camera in front of your face. You hold it perhaps at your hip. You hold it to the side. You're connecting directly with your subject. And so there's a kind of emptying out that she's describing here of where the subjectivity of the photographer is the subject. It's an act of bearing witness. Because taking pictures allowed Abbott to occupy a political position that she couldn't safely occupy in herself, in the biography of who she was, a lesbian, a woman, a leftist. She used the camera in its pure state as a state of witness to have a strong political agency. This is a photograph that I took in her archive of a drawing that was inside one of her notebooks that I like to imagine is an outline of her hands. The state of witness is a drawing of an outline of a place occupied by others, a place that you can't occupy, a place that you stand on the margins of. And Abbott's work documents or it demonstrates how that position has agency and has power, but it doesn't explain what you should do with it. And it doesn't explain how you should feel in that position. It leaves that up to you. In this photograph from the Route 1 series, entitled White Woman Washing White Steps, we see a woman seemingly joyful in her actions, but it's also tedious, it's also labor. She's on her knees, we are above her, and she's racialized. It's an emotionally confusing photograph. In this photograph from the Route 1 series, Old Slave Block, Fredericksburg, Virginia, there's a man sitting talking to another man. He's casual, seems relaxed. It's on a stool of some kind. But it's an auction block. It's another monument to the violence of slavery. Again, an emotionally confusing image. There's a first impression with the Route 1 photographs that they're straightforward, and that what we see is what they are. This is another image from the series entitled Trimmed Australian Pine Along Street, Palm Beach, Florida. Route 1 caught me off guard because what was so obvious or self-explanatory about them, i.e. what was so didactic about them, was actually their poetry. Because what you see is what it is, but what that means is for you to determine.